In this video, we're going to go over things like aligning and distributing and transforming objects. And you can see that on the screen. I just have a couple things. I have a piece of artwork here. This is just coming from a custom shape. And I have a little symbol here coming from the symbols. So everything I'm using here is just something you can grab from inside of the software, and it will allow you to kind of play with these tools. These are all pretty straightforward. The only thing that's a little bit more complicated is when we're dealing with distributing objects. So let's go ahead and just take a look at the first thing, like flipping something horizontally. What that means is it'll flip it on a horizontal path, so it'll change the direction of something like this bird. And we can click that right here in the upper right. When you have it selected, you come up here and you click flip horizontal, and you can see it just changes the direction that the bird is flying. The other thing that we have is a flip vertical. So if you want to make this bird fly upside down, you can just click this little icon here and it flips it vertically. These are both very straightforward. I can flip one vertical and then the other one horizontal. I can flip it back. You can just kind of play around with these tools. It doesn't hurt anything, doesn't modify a design in any way. All it's doing is changing it on a horizontal or vertical plane. So the other thing that you have here is rotate tools. So rotate, it says here, rotate left 90 degrees. So if I click this, it's going to rotate it to the left 90 degrees. If I click it again, it'll do another 90 degrees. So on and so forth. You can go the opposite direction by clicking the other rotate icon. So these are very straightforward. If you need to get something even more rotated, that's when you'll select it and you'll come up here to this transform box and you'll select this little circle here. You can see my icon changes as I hover over it. And now I can just left click, hold, and drag to any position that I want it to be. So that's kind of how the rotate works. So we've flipped vertically and horizontally and rotated left and right. The next thing to do is just talking about aligning objects. So that comes into play when we're dealing with something where we have more than one object. So let me go ahead and make a duplicate of this one, and let me just kind of drag it over to the side. And all I did was click the little duplicate icon right here. That made a copy of it, and it puts a little bit below so it lets you know that you made a copy of it. So sometimes when you're working with things, you'll get it to where you have two items side by side and you're like, you know what, I need to get this to be exactly even with the other one. Well, all you need to do is select both of them, and this is where we'll come up to our alignment tools right here. And I'll click on it and it will tell me all the different options that I have. For instance, I can align it to the left, to the right, to the top, to the bottom. I can horizontally center align. I can vertically center align. I can center it to the rulers, or I can center selected objects. So let's just explore what these are. This one is side by side. So I'm not going to really use a left align because then they'll just put one on top of the other, or right align, which is the first two. I could choose align to the top, and that's going to make sure that the tops of these align perfectly. So it's kind of hard to tell with this one because they're both the same size, but what happens when I make this one a little bit smaller and I move it to the side? I want to make sure that the tops of these are aligning. I can just come in here and click on this align and go to top. If I want it to align at the bottom, I can have it align at the bottom by clicking align bottom. If I want to vertically center these, I can click this, and now the centers of these two are identical. So it's now centered here. Now let's take a look at the other ones. If I kind of have them more in a vertical position. If I select both of these now and I come to align, I can align them to the left. I can click here again and I can align it to the right. You can see it just is aligned perfectly to the right. I can come in here and I can horizontally align these in the center. So now they're both centered to each other. And let's see here. The other things that we can do with this one would be, I didn't show you how to center to the rulers. And what the rulers are right here, you can see where it's 0 right here and it's 0 right here. If I click this icon right here, center to rulers, it's going to put it so you can see here, it's centered with vertically and horizontally to the rulers, 0 and 0. So that's an option you have. And the other thing that you can do is you can select both of them. Let me change the color of this one really quick. You can select both of them. You can come up here to the align and you can center the selected object. So if I click that, it's just going to center one into the other. And there are times when you would want to do that. Like for instance, you had two circles. If I just copy and paste this one and I make one smaller, I'm going to change the color of these back to a dark color. You can see that they're off and it would be kind of difficult to get it perfectly centered. But what I can do is just select both of them, come up here, and I can choose to center selected objects. And now it's going to be one's going to be perfectly centered into the other. So the alignment tools are really easy and they're really straightforward to use. You just need to play around with them, and all they are to help you line things up. So now let's take a look at distributing. Distributing is a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and create a new page here, and I'm going to bring up a symbol. I'm going to just grab, this time I'll do this little baseball here. And what I'm going to do here is just make a few duplicates like this. I'm going to have 3 of them. And the distribute tools are really handy. So if I select 2 objects and I come over to distribute, you're going to see that I can't really do much with 2. It really requires you to have 3 items because it's going to distribute all of them either evenly. You can see here it's kind of like aligning. I can distribute to the left. I can distribute vertically. I can distribute to the right, horizontally. There's a lot of options here. Let me go ahead and distribute to the left. And when I click that, all it's doing is it's lining up the left-hand sides so that they're, this one is, and it's all going through from the outline, but you can see that it's vertically aligning. It's aligning those to the left. Let me go ahead and select everything here. And then we come over here and let's do distribute center horizontally. And you're not going to see much of a change. Let me go ahead and move these move a couple of these because I did already kind of center them a little bit. And let's go back into it and let's go to that distribute centers horizontally. So now everything is centered in the middle. There's going to be the same amount of distance between here and here. It's just it's making it easy to do that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to center these so you can kind of see using the alignment tool. And now I'm going to click and drag and just move it over a little bit more. And let's go ahead and take a look here. If I distribute these to the right, you'll notice that all of these are kind of doing similar things. It's going to have equal space, but it's basically the distance between is going to be identical to each other. And if I do distribute horizontally, you're not going to see a change unless I move this out of the way. Again, these are all designed to help you just line things up and get them where you where they're all have the same distance between. And this is an important thing to keep in mind too, is that you see that there's a line, vertical line for each of these objects here. That means it's going to align it in a more vertical path than a horizontal. And the way that you can tell is like when I'm distributing these so that they have the same distance, notice that they're not the same height, and you'll notice that they're not on the same plane horizontally, but they're lined up vertically, if that makes sense. So if I come to distribute the top space, you'll notice that it did adjust this far one a little bit. If I come over here and let's just do it to the bottom, you're not going to really see a change there. If I move these, it's all about getting the same amount of space. So sometimes it can be kind of hard to see things as they happen. But if I kind of come in here, and I'm going now more in a vertical path here, let's just come over here and do that bottom, and you can see that it just evenly spaced these right here. I can evenly space it through the centers. There's a lot of options here, and you will see that a lot of them seem to be doing the same things, but there are differences, and it's all depending on the artwork you choose. So a lot of times how I utilize a tool like this is if I have things that are kind of more vertical. Let's say that I want to make sure that it fits within, all three of them fit within this area right here. This being the bottom, this being the top. The things that I'll do is I will first select them and I will just center them using the regular alignment tool right here for centering them kind of more horizontally. And then I'll come in here and I'll distribute them evenly. And you can see how that distributes even, but what I forgot to do is just move this one up. I like to move this one up into place so that it's touching that line exactly where I want it. And now I will center them, and then I'll distribute them evenly. And that's just going to give it the right amount of space between each one, and it's going to fit within my upper and lower guideline there. And those are just some of the things that I will do when I am utilizing a tool like this. I do use it quite often when I'm working with anything that has 3 or more objects that I'm trying to not only get them lined up, which I will first use the regular alignment tools, and then I will distribute them to make sure that I get the right amount of space between. So one more time, let's go ahead and take these, and I'm going to just show you a little bit on how I would utilize this again. If I want to get them even space, I've got the sides where I want. I will select both of them. I will come in and I will center these to each other, and then I will distribute them so that the space is equal between by clicking this right here. And now they're evenly spaced. It didn't move the first one. It didn't move the last one. It only moved the one in the middle to make sure that the spacing was same. And that's how that tool works. So even if I had more of these, and let's say I moved this one in closer, and I'll even do this one in closer. What you're going to find is I'm going to clear these guidelines, and I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm just going to drag this guideline right to the edge of this first one and right to the edge of this last one, because I want you to see that it's not going to move these at all. It's only going to move the ones that are in the middle. So first thing I'm going to do, select them. I'm going to center them. so that they're all in the same path there. And then I'm going to distribute them. I'm going to choose this one right here because it's kind of focusing on objects in a more vertical path. And you'll notice that it did not move this one. It kept it on that side, and this one on this edge, it only moved the ones in between. So that's how the distribute tools work. The last thing that we do with alignment, distribute, and transform is sometimes we need to group items. For instance, if I take this one right here, and let's just zoom into it a little bit more. If I select it and I ungroup it, now everything is kind of independent. If I used any of those tools like the vertical, making them centered, you can see what it does to it. It's going to take each individual piece and it's going to work with the alignment, right? So if I did it to the top, you'll notice it'll move everything up to the top. That's just how these tools work. It'll do anything that you have selected. However, if you group it, and all I did was select it and hit this little box right here, now it will no longer do that. It treats this whole selection as one item. So I'm not going to be able to go in there and just do like a center align or anything like that because this is just one object at this point. So it's important to know about grouping and ungrouping. The other way you can group and ungroup is you can right mouse click on something that's selected and you can ungroup it. If it's already grouped together, you can see it's grayed out because I already grouped it. So I can ungroup that. And now I can select things individually. If I want to group it, I can also just right click after I select everything that I want to group and hit the group button, or I can hit Control G on my keyboard. That's the keyboard shortcut for group. Control U is for ungroup. If I click this group, it's going to group it together, and now it's all one object again. Also, or it's grouped together, I should say. Also, up here, you have group and ungroup. If something's grouped, it's going to show you right here by graying out the grouped or the group icon because it's already grouped. Ungroup is not grayed out, so that means that I can click it, and now by clicking that, the other one becomes active, saying that you can group it if you want. But I did click ungroup icon here, so that means that I can tear this one apart. It's important to know how to group and ungroup objects, especially when you're looking at transforming something, like with the alignment tools or the distribute tools, because it'll affect how it behaves. And so if you want the entire baseball to work with, each one of these and not kind of treat the individual pieces separate, you want to make sure that each are grouped. And you can see as I drag these kind of more into position, if I select any of them, it shows me that they're grouped by having that box around these other two boxes, I guess is like kind of what that icon is. But you can see they're all grouped together. And that's kind of an important factor when you're dealing with distribute and align. So those are the different ways you can align, distribute, and kind of transform objects. It's really easy to work with inside of the software. You just kind of have to play around with them. And don't be scared to play with the tools and to get familiar with them.